Hi, guys. I wanted to talk today a little bit about my mythic fiction novel, The Seeker. Some of you know I've been doing a lot of blogs, talk radio appearances, well, in addition to launches and readings and that sort of thing, although I haven't done much of that during COVID because that has to be done in person. I've been doing a lot of, blogs and talk radio appearances and guest spots on blogs. But I've gotten very lucky. And when I have a very like-minded host, there's a lot to talk about. So I have really related and they run long in that case. But a lot of times they haven't read the book. I guess I feel a little bit like Adele, she walked out of an interview recently because they hadn't listened to the album. And what is there to really talk about? And I kind of feel that way, although I take what I can get, but it's ultimately dissatisfying when you can't go too deep. And by deep, I don't mean philosophically deep. I just mean you address the book superficially without really getting into the nuts and bolts of the thematic content or the intention of the writing or any of that. There is only so much to talk about if it's not a like-minded host and if they have not read the material. So I'm creating opportunities for myself. And, I want to talk a little bit today about, believe it or not, the divine feminine and the need for society at the moment for not just parenting, but mothering. So it'll make more sense when I tell you a little bit about the novel. So again, I call it mythic fiction meets visionary fiction. And mythic fiction would be what it sounds like. Madeline Miller recently wrote Cirque and the Song of Achilles, which both did very well. So it's a genre that's sort of on fire. And then visionary fiction is like Dan Millman, if you're familiar with him, or the best example I can think of is Paul Coelho's The Alchemist, which is huge and was obviously a bestseller, has been translated into more languages than the Bible. So to put my novel, The Seeker, in very, very good company, I think of it as The Alchemist meets Song of Achilles. And I will go on to say that the genre of visionary fiction in and of itself is a challenge. It's been said, and I agree, that artistic integrity and literary value suffer when you have an agenda of any kind. So when you're trying to impart spiritual principles or, tenets of any kind, you tend to rob the work, the narrative, of literary value inherently. But it also can easily become pedantic or moralistic or sort of preachy. So I like to think that there's no soapbox in my writing and that I do it very gracefully. I'm very proud of the way I've sort of dealt with universal themes that speak to the human experience, which could be said of all literature, that universal relatable content that speaks to the human condition. And I explore all sides of the coin on my given themes, rather than hopefully spoon feeding or being didactic about what I'm trying to impart. So I hope that's the case, and we'll see. But the reason I go into all of that is because it's a challenging genre to begin with and a marketing challenge. In addition, I want to talk a little bit about being an LGBTQ writer. That's what I haven't, unfortunately, been able to get into too much in the podcast circuit. So simply put, I'm one of those people that believe you can't really separate the artist from the work, and worldview and sensibility and voice and tone and all those things. So in my work throughout my life, I've always identified as a LGBTQ writer because that's my worldview. However, I, of course, strive for the universal, that universal thematic content that I mentioned. So there's so much in life that's universal that's not particular to the gay experience. But more and more, I'm interested in sharing what I know, which is this journey I've been on in which the stakes are sort of heightened. So what I've noticed is when I do shoot for the universal, my work is just not gay enough for certain readerships or audiences. So in the film circuit, for example, if you didn't have the usual suspects that are identifiers of the gay experience, if you didn't have the AIDS crisis or marginalization or ostracization or a coming out story, or even on the other end, the sort of titillation and fluff, if you didn't have the skin factor or include at least one circuit party, the programmers just didn't have a place for it. So none of that is new to me. But I will say in the literary and publishing realm, there are just unique challenges. For one thing, it is dominated by women, and that's getting to the point of what I want to talk about today. And that's a good thing. Obviously, there are so many aspects of society in which women don't have a foothold. So I'm very grateful that almost every literary editor and publisher and agent that I reach out to is a female. It's the downside of that was when I was dealing with, I worked for Random House, Putnam, Penguin, all the majors doing covers for middle grade, for books for young readers, it's called. And I haven't yet done a picture book, but I'm actually sending one out as we speak. So when you get into that territory, it's a little awkward because there are all these tropes. As a gay man, when you mix that with children, suddenly I am reduced to that creep at the ice cream truck with a twisty mustache. I hope that makes sense. There are a lot of holdovers from the past that are hindrances to what are called own voices, and marginalized, like it or not. So the reason I bring that up is The Seeker has a gay protagonist. I could keep saying LGBTQ or queer, but let's just take that for granted. It's a gay male protagonist, which obviously was not unusual in Bronze Age Minoan culture, which is the culture in which it's set. But there's a conspicuous, profound lack of female characters. And visibility and representation is so important right now that I just want to nip this in the bud and say, just in case those literary editors and agents and publishers that I'm reaching out to aren't getting past those first 40 pages for the message, they might be startled by the conspicuous lack of female characters. I'm tempted to hold the book up, but I won't. So let me explain a little bit more. Basically, Amadeus, the fictional protagonist, is of divine heritage, but he doesn't know it. So in other words, he's a demigod, but he symbolically lost his mother at a very young age and is not aware that she was in fact a goddess. Hint, hint, that's code. So the whole book is an odyssey in which he seeks to reconnect with his long lost divine heritage, but he's not aware that she's a goddess. So he ultimately learns that he's a demigod and has a place in Elysium, etc., etc. But truly, the quest, the odyssey, the hero's journey that the whole book is devoted to is about symbolically reconnecting with his divine heritage. We could call that the divine feminine. So, there are many implications to the parable. Everything in the book is symbolic. But the one that I want to kind of make known is that it's no mistake that the hide and seek the protagonist plays with divinity or the gods, as I put it in this book, is the one we all play. In life, the metaphysical, the divine, is hidden from us in this matrix, this illusion, this empirical reality in which we live. We get glimpses, and we're meant to pursue those glimpses, which you could call inspiration or enlightenment. It takes a lot of faith to continue believing in this sort of collective consciousness. So without going too far down that road, the divine feminine is a concept that is alive and well that I did not make up. I want people to know that the symbology of the seeker is so relevant right now in that we are a society in desperate need of mothering, as I said earlier. What do I mean by that? Well, if you look at a lot of the societal ills that have gotten us into this seemingly dire place where we seem to be on the brink of either extinction or incredible transformation on the macrocosmic level, on the societal level, all the things that brought us here are arguably outdated thought forms, paradigms, institutions, conventions that have only been destructive. So they're patriarchal, by the way. So exploitation, manifest destiny, imperialism, which leads to, again, exploitation, marginalization, ostracization. Those are all dead-end roads, and we're feeling that in the moment. So what I want to gently offer is that, if men on the micro level are socialized to be warriors, to protect the tribe. Those are valuable, valuable assets for the proliferation and survival of the species, and in fact, the evolution and transformation of the individual and society. However, there's so much more to life, and love is at the core of all of it. So if our survival needs outweigh, arguably, what interconnects us, which is this field of consciousness or love, then we're destined, we're doomed for extinction. So I like to say, we're just looking for daddy and mommy. We're looking, with the lack of leadership during this last administration, this last 4 years, it's become very obvious people are seeking something more. They're seeking guidance. Yeah, I hate to use the word godless society, but it's certainly feeling that way. So I think we're definitely looking for parenting, but specifically mothering. Marianne Williamson talks about how the archetype of mother as protector applies on a macro level. Women have always been the keepers of our humanity. They've always been the nurturers of our arguably better selves. I'm just going to leave it at that, but I'm going to encourage you to pick up The Seeker if you get a chance. It's not launched yet, but as soon as it is, grab it. And I think you'll see it could not be more relevant in this moment. And we are in dire need of the divine feminine, but also mothering as a culture. All right, thanks for listening. Take care. Bye.